My name is Jason Schuster, and I'm a doctor of physical therapy. The information, mindset, and standards of care medical practitioners learn in school and implement in practice are outdated and objectively failing. Nutrition, supplementation, peptide therapy, and how they affect the epigenome are almost completely absent from medical schooling and mainstream practice. 50% of the United States population is deficient in 6 of 7 key vitamins and nutrients required to maintain health. 80% is overweight, and the average life expectancy is decreasing for the first time in a century. These courses will provide you with the information you need to fill this gap in medical schooling and mainstream practice based on the most up-to-date, peer-reviewed research, giving you the tools that you need to improve your health and the health of your patients. Okay, guys, so for this online nutrition, supplementation, epigenetics, and peptide therapy course series, I just wanted to give you an outline of the courses so you know where to look for different things and what's included in all of this and what you're going to get out of the whole class and why they're important to take as a group rather than just taking one individual class on its own. Although these classes are made to be taken on their own, you're going to get much more out of it if you take all the classes together because they all relate to each other, right? So the first course, this course here, is an intro. It's an introductory course to nutrition, supplementation, epigenetics, the epigenome, and peptide therapy. So what I tried to do with this first course, you guys, is give you a brief background and look into the areas that we cover more in depth in our other individual courses. So in this intro course, you get a little smattering of everything. I tried to include a lot of interesting things that most people don't know about. Regardless of the nutritional information, the vast majority of medical practitioners in the United States are not taught any of this stuff in school. And that includes medical doctors, osteopaths, surgeons, doctors of physical therapy. Really the only medical professions that actually get a significant amount of this type of information is if you get a master's or a doctorate or something in as a dietitian or like a functional medicine practitioner. Functional medicine doctors know a lot about this stuff too, but those are medical doctors or osteopaths that went through regular medical school and figured out that our medical system is completely broken and people are getting sicker and sicker every year. So they took it upon themselves to go back and learn this stuff on their own, right? So unless you go back and you spend hundreds of hours like I have compiling these courses, unless you have the time to do that, you will never know any of this stuff because it's not taught in grad school, even though almost all of this stuff was at least known to some degree or other about 30 years ago. It's still not taught in grad school, right? So course 1 is the intro to nutrition, supplementation, epigenetics, the epigenome, and peptide therapy. In the second course is the epigenetics and epigenome, the reason nutrition, supplementation, and peptide therapy matter. So that course is so interesting, you guys. Basically, everything that we think we currently know about the genome is patently false, right? So the mainstream view of how genetics work is completely wrong. And that is one of the primary reasons why there's so many sick people in the United States and across the world today, is because we're approaching medicine from the completely wrong angle, right? So that's one of my goals with all this stuff, is to help practitioners help their patients, to help practitioners make more money by starting cash-based clinics. That's another thing we do at this company, you guys. And just to provide people in general with information that they don't get from other places that is extremely good information. It's very safe and it's very effective treatments, right? So the reason that epigenetics and the epigenome are so important is that, as far as we understand right now, that is the base level that nutrition, supplementation, peptide therapy, and vitamins are working on, right? So if we do not change our epigenome, we are not going to significantly affect our mental and physical well-being, mental and physical health, right? So as the epigenome gets negatively affected, our genes become more dysfunctionally expressed, and we get more dysfunctional proteins, misfolded proteins, and everything goes downhill from there. One of the things that specifically and directly affects the epigenome are vitamin deficiencies. So in course 3, we have vitamin deficiencies and how to optimally modify the epigenome. So all of this stuff is tied back to the epigenome because per the most up-to-date understanding, and it does make sense to me, it seems like the epigenome is actually more important in the vast majority of instances than the actual DNA is or the actual genome is, right? So 99.9% of all humans' DNA is exactly the same. So if you just want to make it easy, if you think about basically all humans have the same basic underlying material present in their DNA. What makes people different, what makes people taller or shorter or green eyes or blue eyes is how those genes are expressed, how much they're expressed, if they're expressed, and how they're expressed and in what relationship to other genes and proteins. And they all act on each other, right? So it's very, very complicated. What people used to think is basically whatever your DNA said is how you're going to be. But that is totally false, right? We can change the expression of our genes. So we can alter the epigenome through nutrition, supplementation, peptide therapy, and stuff like that, right? So we're not going to be changing the actual gene, but we're going to be changing the way that the gene is expressed and how it's expressed. So the gene's still going to be there, but we can significantly control whether it's expressed or not, how it's expressed. And if we understand what kind of issues we got going on, we can look into optimizing our health through doing other things that will also optimize whatever deficiency you're dealing with in the first place, right? So all very, very important information to have. In the 4th course, instead of vitamin deficiencies, we talk about nutrition, supplementation, and how to optimally modify the epigenome. So in the nutrition supplementation course, you guys, we go through nicotinamide mononucleotide, nicotinamide riboside, resveratrol. We go through omega-3s. We go through a whole bunch of good stuff that people are highly deficient in and things that if you are deficient in cause accelerated aging as we grow older. Just to go back to the vitamin deficiencies course, in the vitamin deficiencies course, I used the most up-to-date, biggest study from the CDC and the NIH, and I don't like either of those companies, but those are the ones that we have to work with. So they have a study called the NHANES study, which is a compilation of data from a 5-year period with over 30,000 people, and they extrapolate it to the whole country. And this is what is typically cited today as the most accurate, even though that is, I'm not 100% sure that it's accurate. I think it's actually worse than it says. But anyways, it gives us a relatively good idea of the common vitamin deficiencies in the US. So in that class, we go through vitamin D. 95% of the entire population is deficient in vitamin D. 84% of the United States population is deficient in vitamin E. 46% is deficient in vitamin C. 45% is deficient in vitamin A. 70% is deficient in magnesium. And 15% is deficient in zinc. And about 50 to 60% of the United States population cannot physically break down folic acid and convert it and methylate it into 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So folic acid is an alien substance. We need to be able to convert it into 5-MTHF to be able to use, and 50% of the United States population has a gene anomaly that does not allow that to happen. 100% of non-organic grains in the United States have folic acid as a so-called fortification, which it should actually be called poisoning, because folic acid is a poison to human beings, right? It's like actually a poison to about 50% of the country, and the other 50% that doesn't have a gene anomaly, they still can't process folic acid well because our bodies were not made to process folic acid. They were made to process 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Humans have only been exposed to folic acid for about the last 50 years, and only in some countries, the US being one of them. And then our last class, you guys, is peptide therapy. This is such a fascinating subject to me. So I use all these peptides. I have a lot of pro athlete friends that use peptides. So
base more or less, you guys, if you want to like try to simplify this in a way to think about it, peptide therapy is utilizing natural peptides that are found in basically every cell in our body or in certain cells of our body. And some of the peptides tend to decrease in concentration as we age, just like a lot of vitamin concentrations decrease as we age. NAD plus, that gives the electron energy to the mitochondria. NAD plus concentrations go down as we age. So we discuss all this stuff throughout all these courses. But one thing that people are really not aware of is their peptides do the same thing, right? So these peptides are, as far as I know, like the safest medical treatments out there with the most positive, potent effects, right? So death, I've never seen an instance of death listed in any literature using these peptides. Almost all these peptides, they can't even find a lethal dose for the mice or the rats that they're using in the study. And if they do find one, like BPC 157, for example, which is the first one we talk about in that course, the lethal dose for a human is 27,000 times the recommended dose. So you would have to take 27,000 times the dose to potentially do something bad for you. So I don't even know how you would have to do that. Like instead of like injecting one syringe or taking one pill, you'd have to like inject like 500 syringes and eat 5 bottles of pills. So it's basically impossible to do anything seriously bad to yourself with these peptides. The worst side effects in all of them are typically like diarrhea, upset stomach, but there's no serious adverse effects for any of these side effects that I talk about. They have huge amounts, or a lot of them have a ton of good literature showing that they're safe and effective. The reason that nobody knows about them and they're not talked about is because natural substances can't be patented. The government and the pharmaceutical companies cannot make money off of natural substances. They have to change the substance a certain amount to be able to get a patent on it. So that's like what they did with Ozempic. Ozempic is it's a semaglutide derivative, right? Semaglutide is a GLP-1 agonist. It works on GLP-1. Ozempic has been molecularly changed, and it's about 50 times stronger and has a much longer half-life than regular semaglutide does. So that's why I don't like Ozempic, because once they change it to the point where they can patent it, those changes are what lead to unknown outcomes and detrimental side effects. The human body has had hundreds of thousands of years to practice working with the natural form of these peptides. So the body knows how to use these natural peptides, and it has safety mechanisms in the case that you may have too much of them. It breaks them down. Once you start injecting alien synthetic stuff into the body, we don't know what the effects are going to be. And that's why you see so many side effects with these things. And we could just publish this medicine and allow people to use the natural substances, but that's not how our government and our healthcare system works, unfortunately. The number one priority is money, and somewhere way down the line is people's health. But the number one priority is money. So anyways, in all of these classes, again, none of this stuff is stuff that anybody gets taught about in medical school, and it's absolutely vital to understand and implement this stuff in your practice and in your personal life if you want to be as healthy as you can. It makes such a big difference in people. It's very easy to do if you have the underlying knowledge, which these courses will provide you with all of the knowledge you need to immediately start making huge changes in your health, in the health of your patients, and in the health of society, which should be all of our goal, right? And it will also help you make more money, and it will give you the tools that you need to go out and start a private cash-based business, which is one of my biggest goals for this company, you guys. The insurance, mainstream, physical therapy, and medical practices are quickly going downhill into the toilet. Insurance reimbursements are getting less every year, especially for physical therapy. The treatment of patients is getting worse, and this is all 100% objectively evidenced by simple objective facts, like 95% of the US population is deficient in vitamin D, 70% is deficient in magnesium. That guarantees that those people cannot be healthy, right? We have other things like omega-3s people are deficient in, NMN, NAD+, all sorts of stuff. So if you're deficient in these things, the problem with our system today, and this is something that we're going to go over in this class, is that none of these common deficiencies are included in the standard comprehensive blood panel. So just FYI, the so-called comprehensive blood panel that is the #1 test that medical practitioners and patients use in the United States to give them a guesstimate of what their health status is. That test only tests for 14 blood markers and 0 vitamins, right? So if it doesn't test for any of this stuff and you don't know that this stuff is out there and exists and is typically a problem for people, you can't, unfortunately, you cannot rely on your doctor to know this stuff, you guys, unless you go to a good functional medicine doctor who will know about all this stuff. Regular primary care doctors will know absolutely 0 about this stuff. They either won't care to look into it or they don't have time to look into it or a combination of both. So this 5-course series is a tool that will help all medical practitioners and any person in general significantly and immediately have the tools to take your health into your own hands and immediately start improving your own health instead of relying on people that are working simply for the money and that don't care about you as an individual at all.